41 people have favorited this deck, 11 people apparently think it's really funny, and according to decks of KeyForge, it's a controller of weakling decks, with only 1 in 10,000 decks being this good. It's a Chinese deck, and Google translates it, however accurately, to Ironclad Stone. Ironclad Stone is rated at 108 SAS, the highest SAS in the world, the next highest being 106. This phenomenon of the KeyForge algorithm is from mass mutation, with houses Dis, Logos, and Saurian, but first we just need to appreciate how many enhancements this thing has, at a whopping 18. 2 raw ember, 2 capture, 2 damage, and a whopping 12 draw. Unfortunately, no verification images have been uploaded for this deck, so we don't know exactly where those enhancements landed, but we know they're in there somewhere, and that 14 of the cards have them. A lot of these enhancements come from the Amphora Captura, which is a fantastic artifact on its own, and the 3 Infomorphs are providing 6 draw icons, and the Cronus is providing 2 draws apiece as well. Amphora Captura is one of the most versatile cards in here. With the sheer amount of enhancements scattered throughout the deck, Amphora can capture like crazy. There aren't a lot of ways to protect that captured ember, like there's no Prefectus Ludo or anything like that. That might be one of the deck's smaller flaws. There are only 16 creatures, but all the high value actions and artifacts more than make up for that deficit, if you could even really call it that. Most of the creatures themselves are pretty valuable as well, although there are a couple vanilla ones in there, but they act as great fuel for things like the Ritual of Tognath. Then we also have the Eaton's Jar, which is providing incredible disruption, as does the Mark of Dis, especially comboing with the Gateway to Dis, and there is scaling Ember control with the Effervescent Principle. Due to the massive amount of draw icons in the deck, the Cronuses put in a ton of work if you can keep them out. With the 2 Cronuses, a single draw icon lets you archive 2 cards, which means you can archive tons of cards all at once, in addition to drawing from the icons themselves. You've also got Professor Torado in here for even more card draw, and 11 mutant creatures to go along with him. And, just to add to the drawing and archiving, there's even an auto-encoder and a Neurosiphon. The efficiency in this deck is just absolutely off the charts. It flies through its cards. In terms of board control, most of it is concentrated in Dis, with the Gateway, the Dance of Doom, and then we also have the Implosion. There's also an Axiom of Grisk and a Stomp in Saurian, and a Mind Over Matter in Logos, which is a very skill-testing card for me. However, there is no better way to get a solid grasp on a deck than to actually play with it. And that's exactly what I did. I played 10 games with this deck on TCO, getting 8 wins and 2 losses in competitive. And the 2 losses actually came in the very last 2 games I played from an incredible Dark Tidings deck, which surprised me, quite honestly. But this deck, this Dark Tidings deck, it just had all the necessary tools to dismantle this 108 SAS deck that I was using. The deck I lost to had lots of fast Untamed Rush and plenty of safe options to get captured Ember off of my creatures without having to destroy them, with cards like Mug and Word of Returning. Since capturing is one of the primary ways Ironclad Stone controls Ember, those cards were ruinous for it, and it pretty much made it impossible for me to keep him off check for more than like 1 turn in a row. His deck was really balanced, with all the right tools, and to top it off, he had a Keyfrog with a Ritual of Life for an immediate key with the right setup. In fact, that's how I lost the first game against him. I was put in a really tricky situation involving Keyfrog and the Ritual, and he ended up popping it for his 3rd key. But let's get into the games that I won. Throughout these games, I realized that Ironclad Stone is really a comeback deck. There were only a couple games where I pulled into an early lead, but in most games I was the one catching up to the opponent. This deck plays slow and methodical, gradually keeping the opponent off their keys long enough for me to catch up and win. It can also tend to move in bursts a lot of the time, going slow for a while, and then suddenly blasting up to enough Ember for multiple keys out of nowhere. The Ritual of Tognath is a huge factor of its burst. A lot of the other bursts, besides Ritual of Tognath, actually came from well-timed Mind Over Matter plays. There were numerous instances where my opponent had lots of captured Ember on their creatures, and I played Mind Over Matter to put it all back into my pool, putting those creatures into their archives, and even bypassing things like the Imperial Scutums, and things like that. Alright, now I need to talk about the Eaton's Jar, because that thing was absolutely critical. I used it to block Miasma from being played, I blocked Tribute, but one thing that I felt like should have been blatantly obvious to me but wasn't, is that Eaton's Jar also blocks me from playing the cards as well. So I think there was one game where I used Eaton's Jar to stop Citizen Strix from being played, but I also have Citizen Strix in my deck, so I wasn't able to play my own Citizen Strixes. Somehow I didn't realize that, but I guess that's the thing that Eaton's Jar does too. But yeah, either way, Eaton's Jar was absolutely pivotal in the deck's success. But in the end, when I say best deck in the world, I mean the highest SAS, the highest rated. I mean, I understand that SAS is not everything. Even 108 SAS does not mean it's the best deck in the world. Ironclad Stone got beaten quite handily twice in a row by a Dark Tidings deck that just had everything necessary to counter it. Like I detailed already, this deck struggles against key cheats and the burst that leads into them, and against capture hate decks as well. So there you have it, a brief analysis on the highest rated KeyForge deck in the world at 108 SAS. Ultimately, Ironclad Stone is a lot of fun to play. The way all the cards fall together is pretty extraordinary, and it was pretty rare, it was very rare in fact, that I ever found myself in a situation where I didn't like the cards in my hand. But let me know what you guys think of this monster of a deck. What points did I miss? What synergies did I miss? I mean, analysis is not my strong suit at all. So I mean, I'm sure there's plenty that I missed, and I would love to hear you guys bring up some points that I did not consider. And yes, I warned my opponents on TCO beforehand that I was using this deck. They did not just blindly go into a match against a 108 SAS deck. They did have the option if they wanted to go against it or not. I did warn them. But yeah, thank you all so much for watching, and I cannot wait to see you all again in the next one. See you later.